Yes, I did write it. Yeah, actually, there was a whole big doodah about the title of the book because they wanted to call it something much more banal.
A name change was something she flat out refused to do. Unclothed, she declined to pose. Also, she was not going to remain quiet. The explosive farewell interview with Raquel Welch explains why the most prominent sex symbol in Hollywood was also its most prominent rebel. She concluded her cinematic career with a secret $10.8 million court fight, a savage dispute with Playboy magazine, and her legendary fur bikini scene, which she ultimately revealed at the sad age of 82. What was shocking? She battled Alzheimer's indiscreetly, keeping her struggles from the public eye until her passing. Raquel Tejada came into this world in Chicago, Illinois, on September 5, 1940. Her name is Raquel Welch. A Bolivian aeronautical engineer, her father emigrated to the United States when she was 17 years old. A portion of her mother's family tree may be traced to the Mayflower, and she also has English and Scottish heritage. In the end, Raquel's distinctive personality, shaped by her diverse upbringing, was what made her stand out in Hollywood. Strong, driven women ran in her family. In 1979, Lydia Guayler Tejada, her cousin, became one of the first female presidents in the Americas when she became Bolivia's first female president. Raquel was just as resolute. As the eldest of 3 siblings, she had a younger brother named James and a sister named Gail, who went on to have a prosperous real estate career. Domestic life, however, was far from effortless. During her time in high school, her parents went through a divorce. That obstacle didn't hold her back, on the contrary, it motivated her to work even harder toward her goal. La Jolla is a peaceful beach community in San Diego, and her family relocated there when she was 2 years old from Chicago. In her Presbyterian upbringing, Sundays were reserved for worship and spending time with loved ones. She walked through life with an ingrained sense of discipline. Raquel had an innate talent for acting even as a little girl. She began ballet training at the age of 7 and continued for 10 years. At 17 years old, her dancing teacher informed her she didn't have the correct body type to pursue her ambition of being a professional dancer. She was compelled to seek out new aspirations instead of having her self-assurance broken. Performing was something she persisted in. A new platform was all she needed. Every aspect of her life at La Jolla High School was exceptional. She excelled academically. Along with being a cheerleader, she served as class vice president. Her composure and charisma, nevertheless, set her apart. No matter where she went, people would notice her. Because of her innate self-assurance, she entered beauty pageants. Miss Photogenic and Miss Contour were titles bestowed upon her at the tender age of 14. She gained more than just prizes from these early victories. They helped her gain confidence and experience performing in front of a crowd. As she continued to compete, she continued to win, rising up the ranks to become Maid of California, Miss La Jolla, and Miss San Diego. With each new title, her desires became clearer. She had already established herself by the time she graduated in 1958. Dreams might come true in Hollywood. It may have happened. Raquel Welch overcame several obstacles on her way to stardom. She struggled as a young lady to juggle the demands of family life with her ambitions before she became famous in Hollywood. Her adventure started in 1959 when she tied the knot with James Welch, the man she had loved since high school. She had only recently turned 19. Even though her father was against it, she did what she felt was right. Tanny was born on December 26, 1961, and Damon was born on November 6, 1959, the couple's firstborn. Even though he would sometimes make an appearance at occasions alongside his mother, Damon preferred to remain out of the limelight. On the other hand, Tanny went on to become an actress and model, appearing in Cocoon and appearing in magazines like Vogue and British GQ. It was a short-lived marriage. Raquel and James divorced in 1964 after they had split in 1962. Their interests had begun to diverge, and marrying young had its own set of difficulties. Still, Raquel opted to retain his surname following the breakup. Hollywood viewers were more likely to remember Welch, she said afterwards. As an added bonus, it helped her break out of the Latina actress stereotype. Ago when ethnically diverse women didn't have many opportunities to shine in Hollywood. Raquel had to get a job so she could support her 2 small children. She started working as a weathercaster for San Diego's KFMB-TV in 1960. Although she gained experience working on camera, her hectic schedule meant she had little time for her studies. She dropped out of San Diego State College, where she was a drama major. In 1963, she uprooted her family and headed to Dallas in search of improved possibilities. She had anticipated a breakthrough, but Dallas was not it. She modeled for Neiman Marcus and served cocktails to help support her family. The assignments provided financial support, but they did nothing to advance her acting career. This time nonetheless molded her. She learned tenacity and redoubled her resolve as a result. In hindsight, she considered these years to have been pivotal. She opted to take a more daring step after 6 months in Dallas. She left her whole life behind in 1963 and settled in Los Angeles. That was a daring step. She was unemployed and without any kind of Hollywood contacts. She was left with nothing except her resolve. After she began going on casting calls, she began to land little parts on TV series like Bewitched, Naval Reports by McHale, and The Virginian. Although these weren't major parts, she gained valuable experience and rose to prominence thanks to them. She also had a cameo as a poster girl on the Hollywood Palace, which was a beauty pageant but didn't do anything to cement her acting career. At about the same time, she crossed paths with Patrick Curtis, an agent and former child actress. Seeing her promise, he assumed leadership of her professional life. With his assistance, she was portrayed as a sex icon in the media. Knowing that Latina actors were not welcome in Hollywood at the time, he also pushed her to keep using Welch instead than Tejada. 20th Century Fox heard about her from producer Saul David's wife, and that was her big break. As a result, she landed a contract and landed her breakout role in 1966's Fantastic Voyage. In order to save a scientist's life, a miniature medical team was implanted within his body in the revolutionary science fiction adventure Fantastic Voyage. A technical assistant named Cora Peterson, played by Welch, finds her way around this bizarre tiny universe. The picture, which Richard Fleischer helmed, became an enormous hit. Released on August 24, 1966, it was nominated for 5 Academy Awards and won 2, for Best Art Direction and Best Visual Effects. Welch, who was still relatively unknown in Hollywood, managed to keep up with more seasoned performers like Stephen Boyd. In retrospect, she acknowledged that she experienced stage fright when performing technical conversation. She had to rehearse the words oxygenation and respiratory system several times before she felt comfortable using them. Her acting was great, but the sight of her in the skin-tight wetsuit is what audiences will remember most about the film. She proved she had the charisma to star in major films with the smash hit that catapulted her to stardom. A prehistoric fantasy picture called 1 Million Years BC, in which she appeared a few months later, catapulted her to international stardom. Hammer Films' epic prehistoric dinosaur film took place in a world where warring tribesmen do battle. Welch portrayed the role of Loanna, a cavewoman who said just 3 words during the whole film. Her performance was memorable for more than just the words she used. The bikini with fur did. The outfit, which Carl Toms designed, was exquisitely tailored from doe skin to accentuate her physique. Pictures of Welch wearing it for publicity purposes went viral. Among these images, one became an instant classic, selling as many copies as Betty Grable's iconic World War II pinup. Production was intense. The shoot took place on the Canary Islands in the dead of winter, subjecting Welch to bone-chilling temps in just her iconic bikini. Calling the film a dinosaur movie, she subsequently said she had reservations about accepting the part. However, the financial success of the picture validated the decision. Its 1967 US release and December 1966 UK release solidified her position in popular culture. From Destiny's Child survivor to The Shawshank Redemption, the fur bikini has been a source of inspiration for movies and music videos for decades. Welch, though, was more than simply a Hollywood starlet. She was also an independent lady who would not conform to the expectations of her profession. Jo Raquel Tejada came into this world on September 5, 1940. Bolivian was her father. She descended from Mayflower-era Americans through her mother. Executives at 20th Century Fox pushed her to have a new name when she signed with the studio. They preferred Debbie over Raquel because of her perceived ethnicity. She was adamantly opposed. To better fit in with Hollywood, several Latina actresses of the period had their names anglicized. Margarita Cancino, better known as Rita Hayworth, was one of those people. However, Welch was adamant about maintaining her maiden name. She never lost her own personality, even though she adopted her first husband's surname to escape being stereotyped as a Latina actress. Hollywood was at a loss on how to classify her. American media outlets didn't often use adjectives like Latino or Hispanic before then. As a result, she kept her many roles a secret. However, she openly celebrated her background in the early 2000s. "Latinos will remain in the United States," she said in a 2002 speech to the National Press Club. "To be Latina is an honor for me." The decision to maintain her given name was deeply emotional for her. Actors were subtly resisting the industry's tendency to mold them into stereotypes. She paved the way for generations to come by being authentic, and she did it by being true to herself. Her works of the late 1960s and early 1970s demonstrated her versatility as an actor while also sparking controversy and challenging preconceptions. Her 1969 film 100 Rifles portrayed Sarita, a Yaqui rebel who fought for Mexican rebel rights. Jim Brown, who played Sheriff Lidecker, and Raquel Welch had one of the first interracial romance scenes in Hollywood in this picture. For its period, this was a daring action. The Supreme Court had just upheld the legality of interracial marriage nationwide 2 years prior. The amorous encounter between a white woman and a black guy was too much for some viewers. Conservative viewers were particularly outraged. However, the connection was not included in the film for the only purpose of provocativeness. The story's logical progression naturally included the two protagonists bonding over common challenges. The portrayal of Lidecker as a courageous and upright individual challenged prevalent racial prejudices in the film industry. Welch gave Sarita nuance, elevating her character above that of a mere romantic interest. As a woman, she stood up for what she believed in. Regardless of the backlash, 100 Rifles was a watershed moment for the cinema industry. In Myra Breckenridge, 1970, released the following year, Welch played a far more daring part. She portrayed the role of Myra, a transgender woman who takes aim at the oppressive power system in Hollywood after undergoing gender reassignment surgery. Based on a book by Gore Vidal, the picture was completely out of left field. There were overt themes, cheesy dialogue, and an absurd narrative that tested all limits. It was a bold move to play Myra. Gender identity was a taboo subject in most mainstream movies back then. Welch played Myra with audacity, making her erratic and manipulative as she used deception and mayhem to achieve her goals. Behind the scenes, though, the picture was a total bust. Cast members, including Welch and director Michael Cern, had disagreements. Things rapidly got out of hand in terms of manufacturing. Upon its debut, critics panned it, describing it as incomprehensible and lacking in taste. However, a cult following developed for it as time went on. Film historians started to view it as a bold effort to question Hollywood's antiquated standards, while fans loved its outrageous flair. Once written off, Welch's performance is now considered a career highlight. Welch revealed a different side of her personality in the 1973 film The Three Musketeers. Her role as Constance Bonashu allowed her to combine comedic timing with action sequences. Constance wasn't your typical swashbuckling heroine, she actually had a purpose. On top of being intelligent and energetic, she was also comically clumsy. Welch was famous for her physical comedy and her comic timing. When Porthos freaked out and covered his eyes as Constance was dragged away on stilts, it was one of her funniest moments. Her outstanding performance earned her the title of Best Actress in a Motion Picture at the Golden Globes. Artistic or comedic? With the likes of Oliver Reed and Christopher Lee, Welch was able to hold her own in the critically acclaimed picture. She proved she was equally at home in action sequences by taking charge when her co-stars faltered while riding horses. Following the 1974 success of The Three Musketeers, Welch was once again firmly established in the Hollywood industry with the release of The Four Musketeers. Among the finest in swashbuckling movie, according to Quentin Tarantino, who lauded her comic timing decades later. A star of her era, she was more than that. She made an indelible impression on cinematic history as an actor. The struggle to maintain a healthy equilibrium between her love life and her aspirations was a constant in Raquel Welch's life. She tied the knot 4 times, but love never truly satisfied her. James Welch, who she had a romantic relationship with in high school, was her first husband. They tied the knot in 1959 and raised Tanny and Damon. She became a mother and had a thriving acting career at the tender age of 19. The strain was too much. Even after she and James got a divorce in 1964, she continued to go by his surname. She came clean later on how she and him couldn't have been more different in their job aspirations. The producer and former child actor Patrick Curtis was her second husband. That was 1967 when they tied the knot. Her spouse, Curtis, was more than that. He was instrumental in guiding her professional path. They worked hand in hand to create Raquel Welch's iconic appearance, which propelled her to Hollywood stardom. There were issues, though, when marriage and business were mixed. The pressures of celebrity and public expectation put a strain on their relationship. They split up in 1972. Few could equal Welch's career by 1980. André Weinfeld, a French filmmaker, was her husband the same year. After 10 years of marriage, this one ended. One of their joint ventures was Raquel's TV special with Love and Broadway Productions. Personal tensions aside, their collaboration was fruitful creatively. Their marriage dissolved in 1990 when they began to drift apart. Terrestre tour Richard Palmer was her last husband in fourth marriage. They tied the knot in 1999, but it was in 2004. Welch considered the reasons her marriages failed later in life. She said to Piers Morgan in an interview from 2015 that she liked being alone and was too stubborn. She believed that a partner wasn't necessary for her happiness. Welch was always a mother first, even when her marriages didn't succeed. On November 6, 1959, Damon came into this world, and on December 26, 1961, Tanny did as well. Raising a family while working in Hollywood was never a picnic. Later in life, Welch said that she felt terrible guilt over the time her job stole away from her kids. It was not uncommon for Damon to make appearances at public events with his mother. He was by her side when she earned her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1996 and went to the Oscars with her in the 1970s. The media paid close attention to his 1991 wedding, particularly to Welch's attire. Despite initial criticism, subsequent accounts praised it for being tasteful and suitable. Tanny became an actress and model like her mother before her. The 1985 film Cocoon and its sequel catapulted her to stardom. She was also featured on the covers of British GQ and Vogue. However, Tanny was more interested in keeping a low profile than her mother. To escape the limelight that came with being Raquel Welch's daughter, she disappeared from the Hollywood scene after the mid-1980s. Welch did her best to be close to her children despite the difficulties of juggling her home life with her stardom. Damon and Tanny's subsequent joint public appearances demonstrated the depth of their friendship. She was more than just mom to them, even if she was a Hollywood legend. Welch was often doused in allegations due to her status as one of the most notorious sex symbols of her day. Hollywood was always guessing about her romantic relationships. She was associated with actors like Burt Reynolds, whom she co-starred with in 1969's 100 Rifles, and Richard Burton, who co-starred with her in 1972's Bluebeard. Most of these rumors, however, Welch wrote off as idle chatter. Hollywood frequently presumed that beautiful women had spectacular private lives, she said in subsequent interviews. She took great delight in maintaining an air of professionalism and separating her personal life from her working life. Beyond the Cleavage was Raquel's book, in which she discussed how being a sex symbol may eclipse her skills at times. Raquel Welch's public persona frequently became detached from her actual self. Even though she was a major sex symbol in Hollywood, Raquel Welch refused to fit in. She refused to pose naked under any circumstances. Studio's upper management pressured her. She consistently turned down enormous deals from publications like Playboy. The pursuit of fame had no role in her choice. On a personal level, according to her, her father's ideals were a major impact. "You are simply not behaving in the manner that my father expected of me." Having that conviction helped her stand apart during an era when actors were expected to conform to industry standards. A refusal from Hugh Hefner would not go unanswered. For a long time, he tried to get Welch to accept his increasing financial offers. On her own terms, she accepted to star in 1979's Playboy. Clutching nothing, she posed in a revealing red bikini. His frustration was palpable. He was still obligated to pay her the entire money they had agreed upon, even if he found the shoot dull. It was about more than simply a single picture session. Mastery was at stake. Welch refused to be defined by Hollywood because she realized her own value. In the 1969 Western 100 Rifles, which takes place during the Mexican Revolution, Welch played a daring new character. Welch and Jim Brown, an ex-NFL player turned actor, had an interracial romance scene that went viral. Despite being a pioneer in Hollywood, there were some bumps in the road behind the scenes. The film's co-star Burt Reynolds subsequently characterized the dynamic between Welch and Brown as explosive. Brown acknowledged that he maintained his distance from Welch in order to show respect for her husband, but it appeared that she did not trust his motives. They argued during filming, and the tension made the environment unpleasant. The situation was exacerbated by the scorching heat in Spain. Temperaments erupted when temperatures hit 110 degrees. Attempting to maintain harmony was a common task for Burt Reynolds. According to Welch, she felt uneasy while she was in Brown's company. She thought herself to be fiery, but he was really powerful, she said. Filming their love moments was particularly challenging due to their differences. Tom Grease, the director, was not helpful. He was adamant on filming the tender scenes early on, before the performers had established any rapport. The end consequence was an anxious workplace, which, paradoxically, contributed to the film's financial success. The media couldn't help but discuss the contentiousness of an interracial relationship depicted on TV. Welch persevered in the face of adversity. She demonstrated she was more than meets the eye by pulling off the physically difficult part on her own. Although the film challenged conventional wisdom, it further cemented her image as an unflinching fighter, both on and off-screen. Welch wasn't safe from the seedier side of Hollywood even though she had established her career independently by the 1980s. She was let off from Cannery Row after only 7 days of filming in 1981. Her 15-year younger replacement, Deborah Winger, was hired by the studio. MGM said that Welch's insistence on doing her cosmetics at home was the reason for the delays. She had no intention of letting that slide. Claiming conspiracy, defamation, and breach of contract, she filed a lawsuit against MGM. After her name was leveraged to get financing for the picture, she said, the company replaced her with a younger, less expensive actress. She finally prevailed in 1986 after a long and arduous judicial struggle. Her historic $10.8 million verdict was a resounding triumph for the sexism and ageism that permeate Hollywood. There were repercussions to winning the lawsuit, though. She had become a nuisance to the studios. After the lawsuit, Welch said that she had no further interest in appearing in big-budget Hollywood films. According to her, my acting career ground to a standstill. Who wants you once they suspect you've broken the contract? The case also brought the dark side of Hollywood to light. Defamation charges were brought against David Beagleman, the former head of MGM, after he made false statements about Welch and Rolling Stone. An actress's career may be ruined if she dared to defy strong bosses, as demonstrated by his collapse. The 1980s were a dark period for Raquel Welch's career. Her once famous roles began to fade away. She scored a role in the 1980 film adaptation of John Steinbeck's Cannery Row. However, Deborah Winger was cast in her stead before production even began after MGM dismissed her. The studio, according to Welch, fabricated stories about her behavior in order to save money. In court, she pursued them. Was successful in a 1986 breach of contract lawsuit, receiving $10.8 million. A major win that brought attention to the sexism in Hollywood. Of course, there was a price to pay for the victory. Major studios began to cease casting her after that. Because of her reputation as an agitator rather than an actress, she was blacklisted. Welch shifted her focus to television once cinema jobs dried up. Right to Die, a drama she featured in 1987, was about an ALS patient who fought for the option to end her life. She was nominated for a Golden Globe for the performance, which served as a reminder that she was more than simply a sex symbol. However, Hollywood maintained its distance despite the positive reviews. Regardless of their brilliance, the business has a way of ignoring women beyond a particular age. Welch stubbornly clung to life. She didn't sit around hoping for another major job, she went out and did it. She debuted her Raquel Welch Total Beauty and Fitness program in 1984, which included yoga routines, nutrition guidance, and exercise DVDs as well as a book. Its meteoric rise to fame coincided with the 1980s fitness boom. Her greatest achievement, however, occurred at a later date. Hairwear, a range of high-end wigs, was her creation. Due to their high quality and fashionable design, the wigs quickly became bestsellers. Additionally, she dabbled in cosmetics and jewelry, but those endeavors did not achieve the same level of success. By the turn of the millennium, her career had expanded beyond that of an actor. She was a successful entrepreneur whose name was often in the news. Welch nevertheless found time for Hollywood, despite her emphasis on business. She appeared as a fictionalized version of herself on the 1997 Seinfeld episode. She battled with Elaine and Kramer, refused to walk with her arms swinging, and made a humorous mockery of herself. She was able to reach an audience that may not have been familiar with her earlier work because to this part. You might recognize her from her appearances on Spin City and 8 Simple Rules, among others. That she have an innate talent for humor. Welch continued to make a splash in the 2000s despite playing supporting roles in fewer films. Her character, Mrs. Wyndham Vandermark, was an affluent widow with ties to the legal drama in the 2001 film Legally Blonde. With $142 million worldwide, the film was a smashing success at the box office. In her final big appearance, Welch played the central character's sharp-tongued mother-in-law on the 2017 TV series Date My Dad. She co-starred with Salma Hayek and Eugenio Derbez in the comedic film How to Be a Latin Lover that same year. Welch maintained her flair and sense of humor throughout her film career. She was always a Hollywood icon. One of the most iconic cinematic costumes of all time was her fur bikini, which dates back 1 million years BC. By taking part in cameos that lauded her fame, she understood how to live up to her own myth. Welch battled an illness in her latter years that she kept hidden from the public eye. She opted to keep her Alzheimer's disease diagnosis a secret. She was 82 years old when she died on February 15, 2023, following a short illness. What she left behind went beyond her stardom and good looks. She had battled for her career, turned herself around when the business rejected her, and established a name for herself that would endure for decades. Despite her fame, Raquel Welch was much more. A survivor she was.